appreciate you all joining our full Procure to Pay demo with Pearsoft, specifically for the Microsoft Dynamics group. My name is Josh Campanero. I'm an account executive here at Pearsoft. We also have a few other team members here. Tammy Bower, our senior solutions engineer, she's actually going to be walking through the demo today. Just kind of a recap of Pearsoft. I'm sure many of you already use our solution in some capacity. We really are a full Procure to Pay solution, starting with the procurement tool, moving into AP automation, as well as our payment solution. Mixed in there, we do have document management, analytics, and reporting tools that you all can use. Again, some of you might be familiar with a few of those things, but really, when Pearsoft started, we really wanted to be a full offering from beginning to end, really controlling your spend through that procurement and requisition process, all the way through processing your invoices, ensuring those match your purchase orders, or if you're not using purchase orders, using non-PO invoices and getting those through a workflow before making your payments. So that's what we're going to cover today. Like I said, specifically for the Microsoft Dynamics space, what Tammy's going to show is going to begin with that requisition and procurement tool. Purchasing things, really controlling your spend at the beginning so you're not getting those invoices later on and not wondering what the spend may have, where that may have come from. And then we're going to dive into the invoice capturing and see the workflows to get invoices approved and making sure employees throughout your organization are staying on top of the invoices that they need to approve. And then, of course, at the end, we're going to show how we can make payments for you. So whether those are checks, ACH, virtual cards, we do offer a full pay service to help streamline that payment process. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tammy. She's going to dive into the demo. We do have a Q&A open, so feel free to throw questions in there, whether it's functionality or anything you have. Just please use the Q&A, and we'll be sure to answer those towards the end. Awesome, Tammy, take it away.
Wonderful, great. It's nice. I was flipping through or gliding down the list of attendees, and I recognize some of your names. So it's great to see you on this webcast to see what Pearsoft has to offer new and improve beyond what you're already using. And then I also know that there are some individuals that are not familiar at all with Pearsoft. So in this hour or 55 minutes, actually, you're going to get a lot of information. You're going to see a lot of things. Know that I'm going to go as deep into some of these features and products as I can, but it is an hour and we're going to do P2P, procurement to payment. So there's a lot to cover. What you're looking at here is my home page. This home page is really the place that individuals are going to go, whether they are somebody who needs to do a requisition, somebody who needs to approve a PO, somebody who needs to approve an invoice or validate an invoice because it came in for with OCR and they want to make sure that's correct, routing it through approval, all the way to the treasurer who is going to actually hit a button that says approve for payment and the checks are going to get processed, or the ACH. So this is kind of the main hub of where you're going to be accessing it. Now, we have very tight security, right? So not everyone is going to have access to this payments tile, right? And probably there's going to be some that may only need to go into the workflow. So just know, again, if you're new to Pearsoft and our offerings, we have very, very tight security, but I like to call this that main hub of accessing wherever you need to go or wherever you can go. So let's talk about that very first step. I'm sitting in a department or another location, building, wherever, and I need to order something. If you're not familiar with procurement, or maybe you're not using that at all, POs, whether it's with GP or Business Central, this is going to give you a handle on your ability to understand, what's out there that is promised to pay, right? What we've ordered versus being surprised when that invoice comes in. So there are a lot of benefits to utilizing a procurement PO system, whether it integrates with your ERP system, GP or BC, or not. It could be a standalone system just to give you some control on your spend. So, excuse me. I thought I had done that enough before I started, but so let's say I wanted to buy something, right? So if I'm a purchasing or an individual who wants to purchase something, I'm going to click on this tile and the procurement PaperSave Procurement's going to come up. This is the window. Now, again, I'm an admin in my system. So not only do I get to create requisitions, I want to buy these things, but I also get to go into the approval center, and I also get to look at the purchase orders. This is all user defined, role based, right? Who's in the system and what can they do? I'm set up as an admin. So from this first screen, you're going to see two types of catalogs, right? Sections. These punch out catalogs are the relationship that you have with maybe those larger vendors that offer punch out catalogs. This is going to give you the ability to go in and say, yes, I want these items available. It's going to give that individual the ability to identify where their items are, you know, if there are staplers or there aren't staplers. These are just a couple of the suppliers that we integrate with, or let me say that better, that actually have punch out catalogs that we can integrate with. Not all suppliers have punch out catalogs, but so I've got these that work with the full catalog of Amazon and McKesson. And then you have the ability to create your own catalog. So you might have an IT or office supplies, or maybe a new employee catalog where they can go in and purchase things that they might need for their office maintenance. But you can have as many of these, and there are items in there. We'll go into both of those. But this is kind of that home page. So if I'm an employee and I want to ask to buy something, and I'm going to check Amazon, I can go into Amazon, click on this. And again, this is going to create or let you interface with Amazon's buying website, right? So instead of when you purchase something now as an individual, you have your payment system set up in there, and it's going to charge your credit card. But when I come in as an employee, when I submit something to, I want to buy this, and let's go ahead and just type in stapler, right? We'll just buy a stapler. This shopping experience is just like normal, right? They get to see what's available, and let's go ahead and buy this basic stapler. It's going to give me the option. Do I want a 3-pack, 1-pack, all the same things that normally happen. But when I add it to my cart, it's going to, when I'm done, it's going to add it to my line of requisitions. It's not going to order it at that point because I have to get it approved, right? So this is that punch out catalog capability. So now I'm at my cart, and I can click here and see what's in my cart and submit this for approval, right from here. So now it sent it to my cart here inside of the requisition software, PaperSave. Oops, let's go back to the catalog. So I've got one item in my cart. It's my stapler. Well, maybe I also want to buy some equipment. Well, these catalogs are the items that you might have that you've said, all right, from these vendors, and you can identify the vendors that you have set up in your ERP. We'll integrate with them, and we'll say, all right, well, from this vendor, I want to buy, one of these laser printers. And I can click on it, see more detail, and say add to cart, right? And it's adding it to the cart. And I can continue to do that as I build my requisition. They're not all going to be from the same vendor either, right? So I already know I have one from Amazon. This is going to be from a different vendor, and I want 2 boxes of those. And let's do one more item. Let's go back to office supplies here. Sorry. And let's order some of these. And let's order, let's say 4 boxes of these. Well, great. So now I've built my items that I know I need or I want, right? So let's look at my cart. I've got Sharpies, I've got printer, I've got my stapler from Amazon. And now I want to create my purchase order, or my requisition, not my purchase order, my requisition. Now I get a little bit more detail on these items, right? I see all the lines. I can put in a description. So we're going to call this webcast 1010 or 1024, excuse me. and we're going to call that. There's some defaults. It already knows who I am, so it fills in the defaults up here. There are also other defaults that come in because I'm requesting it. It knows the department, where it's going to be sent, all that good stuff. And it can default account numbers. This just gives you an example of what it can default. But I also have the ability to search. And as I type in miscellaneous, this account number is looking into your ERP. So it's looking into the chart of accounts in Business Central or GP, depending on what you're using, and it fills that in. Now, again, that is something, do you want the individuals to do that? You saw that there was an account number that already was pulled in. That's because we tied one to the item. You can do that. And I can also say, hey, I need this one. I need this by, next Friday, but maybe the next one I don't need until, the following week or what have you. So you can do this for each of these line items. I'm not going to change all the account numbers, although, that account number really doesn't make sense that we set this up as, but that's all right. We'll go ahead and do this one. Now, what if I needed to order something that wasn't an item that we had in one of the catalogs? Well, I can also add a line. So maybe I need to have the office cleaned. So I can say this is office cleaning. I didn't spell that right, but that's okay. And what's the description? Cleaning, office, 1, 2, 3. Maybe I know the vendor, maybe I don't. We'll go ahead and just pick, we'll pick this vendor. It doesn't matter. That's a travel company, but that's okay. And you can limit what they can choose from as well. And we want 10 hours of that. What's the order, the breakdown? We can pick the breakdown and we'll say each and the price, $70 to clean. So I can go in and I can add lines as well. Once I'm done, I'm going to submit this. Now I could save it if I'm not ready to submit it yet. Maybe there's something else. I could save it and come back to it. But I'm going to go ahead and save it or send it. So now you can see that I've got waiting approval on this requisition. This is where that workflow is going to start. So who needs to approve my purchases? Does it go to my boss? Does it go to the district manager? Does it go to the CFO? Where does it go? These are workflows that you're going to be able to build within inside of the PaperSave tool to determine how it gets routed for approval. There is an approval center. Now, again, I'm going to be able to see everyone's approvals, right? So these are Janet's approvals, but I'd see mine if I was an approver and everybody else. But if I only had the rights to see mine, I'd only see mine. Once they're approved, it comes over and it creates a purchase order or purchase orders, right? So here you can see that I created some of these purchase orders already. This A travel, that is the 70 hours or 10 hours of office cleaning. And it's when it says that it's approved and or delivered, that means the invoice or the purchase order has actually been sent out. So let's go ahead and look at what that looks like. Let's see. I have to go into it. Sorry about that. I knew that. I knew that. So this is what the purchase order looks like. And this is the requisition number that it was tied to. And this is the purchase order. Now, my system is actually tied to GP. So we're going to go ahead and pull that purchase order up in GP. But if I go back, remember, if I'm the one who's waiting for these things to be approved, I can see that, oh, okay, it was approved. And then I can actually go in and see the 4 POs, right? Because there were 4 different vendors, Signature Systems, Amazon, Comex, and A Travel. So it literally created 4 different POs. And I can go in and see that. And if I wanted to see the PO, there's the PO. There's comments that you can add to the PO, special instructions that you might want to add. You can do all of that. But that's what the PO looks like. All right, so let's go back in here. So let's go into GP. Now, again, this particular requisition product that I'm working in now, my demo environment, is tied to GP, but it would do the same and create the purchase order inside of BC as well. So let's go out to Business Central, GP, and let's go to that purchase order. And if I look up here, these are the ones that I literally just created, right? So if I come into, here's the Amazon, these were the stapler that I ordered, right? There's the stapler. So that's the integration from the requisition procurement software. All right. So when you think about what that slide shows, this is the first step. I want to buy, somebody goes through an approval process, and then we automatically create that purchase order transaction inside of GP and or Business Central. So that when the invoice comes in and we bring in that invoice, we can look to the PO inside of the ERP and pull those line items in, right? So that's what we'll do next. And if there are questions on the requisition and the catalogs and approval process, just type those in the notes. We'll get to them, and hopefully we'll have some time to answer some live questions. All right. So now what happens? Well, now the invoices come in, or they need to be received. And so depending on what your process is, PaperSave, the document management automation, workflow automation tool for invoicing, can also do the receiving with a shipment. So again, in GP, it's a little different. You receiving shipment transaction, right? And then you do the enter match. That's a three-way match, but we can also do a two-way match where you're doing the invoicing and receiving simultaneously. So all of that can happen, ultimately creating either one of those transactions inside of GP. In Business Central, it's a little different, but we can create those corresponding transactions as well and associate the document. So now we're going to take it from an invoice standpoint, right? So we've got the requisition in there, but we know that we also get invoices that aren't PO related, especially those of you who aren't using requisitions now. Obviously, all of your invoices are non-PO. And so you're going to have a mix of those for a long time. Maybe the majority of them are going to be non-PO and then PO, and that might change as you implement the system, depending on what your protocols are. But you're always going to have that mix of PO and non-PO related invoices. So let's talk about how those invoices get into the system. One of the nice things about PaperSave is we can not only automate the approval process and the keying process, but we can also automate the acquiring of the documents. So think of this is, I can show this, but we'll talk conceptually here. Think about the invoices that are coming to you from your vendors electronically via email as attachments, right? Well, one of the things that PaperSave can do is we can actually monitor email addresses. We wouldn't monitor your work email address, your personal work email address, but if you had AP invoices at your organization's name.com email address set up in your email server, you can tell PaperSave, hey, look to this email address periodically. Mine's about every 30 to 45 seconds, and bring that document in. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag and drop one because it doesn't really matter. I'm going to drag and drop one into this folder. And let's just hypothetically say that this is your email address, right? That you said PaperSave monitor. Well, what's going to happen is PaperSave is going to look to this email address periodically, see that it has an email with an attachment, and take that attachment and drop it into the first step of your workflow. So again, if you've got the majority of your vendors sending their invoices via email, get them to send them to one email address that PaperSave is monitoring, and you don't have to look at those. They'll automatically show up in your workflow, PO related or non-PO related. Now, what will happen is once we look to that attachment is going to end up in the workflow. We don't delete the email. We just move it over to a process folder. So that'll end up over there soon. My invoice, it looks periodically throughout the day to bring that in. All right. So that's one way of getting the documents in. We'll monitor that. You don't have to worry about it. If it's coming in paper, you're going to have to scan it. And you'd scan it to that email address, right? Great. PaperSave, you scan it, you walk away. When you come back, it's going to be in that very first step of the workflow. We also give the ability to drag and drop or use scanners hooked up to your workstation. I'm not going to show that today, but when those documents show up in your workflow, they're going to have all the data already populated. And that's through the OCR. Before I go into that, I want to talk about the workflow I'm going to take you through. Again, I'm one person, just like in that requisition. I played myself, I played Janet for approving and, all of those things. So I'm one person. Mine went through one level of approval to create those purchase orders. In my workflow for invoices, I've got multiple steps because maybe some are PO related, some are not. They end up in a step called AP review. AP can submit them. If they match perfectly to the PO, we can hit a button that says submit. It will automatically create the corresponding transaction. If they need to be routed for approval, great, they get routed to one-to-many. In a review step, people review it. You can have rules to escalate based on coding, department, cost category, dollar amount, all of the above, location, whatever it might be. There can be many levels of escalation. Ultimately, it comes back to accounting for that. I call it the last right of refusal. You hit a button, it creates the transaction. Again, whichever transaction that invoice is related to, enter match, purchase invoice, shipping invoice transaction, or I think it's called a vendor invoice inside of Business Central. All right. A purchase invoice, I think is what it's called. Sorry about that. All right. So this is what my workflow looks like. So I'm going to put on my accounts payable hat. They're the first person in my world who sees the invoices. So again, here are my tiles that I get to go into. I'm going to go in and open my workflow. Now, because PaperSave already knows, or PairSoft already knows who I am based on my login into my computer, we can leverage single sign-on. So when turn on your computer in the morning and you type in your username and password, we can authenticate against that. Now, on a side note, if there are any IT people or system security people on the line, we also have dual authentication. If you need to do that, we can do that. But because I've logged in, my system already knows who I am, and it knows I like to see a dashboard first. This dashboard is literally an overview of this workflow that I just showed you, invoices, and then we'll get to pay in a second, or well, in a minute. And it's basically saying I've got 31 invoices sitting in this workflow that total just over 130,000. I can see due dates because when we bring in and we do OCR, optical character recognition, on those invoices, we're capturing the dollar amount and the due date. And we'll talk more about that in a second. I also can see that, man, I've got 5 that are past due, but I can check on them and I can see, oh goodness, they're in the payment review step. So we're going to have to get those payments processed quickly. We can talk more about that in a second. I get a breakdown of my steps in the workflow. And then I can even toggle over here and see who owns what. Maybe I find out that Angela Perry is out of the office. Well, I have the ability to move this document from her queue to somebody else's. Maybe I want to change the owner from her to Sammy because she's gone. And in her absence, Sammy's the one who approves things. Well, great. I'm going to change it. Now, Sammy happens to be the owner of that document. We'll talk about workflow and how that can be automated. Even if somebody's out of the office, they can set their out of office in PaperSave and say, hey, I'm going to be gone until a certain period of time. Who do I want my invoices to and why am I sending them to them? Right. So they can set that. If they forget, you can do it too. And you can set to head off things that pass before they come to that person. But then you can make those changes to anything that's already in the workflow. So this really is just that high overview. So again, as a former accounts payable admin who did everything manually back in the day, I didn't have insight as to where any of those invoices are. Now, at least I can know if I was looking for something specific, I can click on that and I can filter by vendor and look for the vendor that I need to find, or filter and search by that vendor name, right? I can do that. All of that is giving you access to your invoices right at your fingertips. All right. But I'm going to play accounts payable. I'm going to toggle over here. here are my invoices that I have in this queue. Now, this happens to be a non-PO. I want to talk about both PO and non-PO. We showed how we create that PO. I will go in and show how we pull those line items as well in just a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about the non-PO here. All right, so when an invoice comes in, we do a lot of the data entry for you. We pull in the vendor name. We do this by pulling information off of the vendor invoice and then validating it against your data inside of Business Central or GP. So if I click on this, this literally is being pulled. This data is being pulled from, this one is GP. So it's being pulled from GP, right? Once we find that vendor, we put in the vendor ID, and we can also do a couple of other things, right? We can actually pull in and calculate the due date. So if there's no due date on the invoice, we can go to that vendor and say, oh, it's set up as net 30, and then actually calculate the due date for you, right? Now you'll notice that my invoice number, or excuse me, my invoice date doesn't match. Everything's old, so I have to actually give it different information, like this, right? So if I take that away, you're going to see that it is a duplicate. We check for duplicates, not only inside of your ERP, but also think about all these future steps of the workflow. We're going to check all those steps to see if this invoice exists anywhere else. Maybe the vendor sent it twice, right? So that's why we changed this invoice, or I changed the invoice number. So we're going to say, put in today's date and my initials. All right, I can do a description. I can teach it, do a point and click, or I can just type. We'll just type in test here. One of the other things that PaperSave is going to do is we will pull in, if that vendor is set up with a default account number, we'll pull that in. If not, we can type the number if you know it, or if you don't know it, you can type in, office supplies. I would venture to say that accounting knows. And we're literally, let's type in supplies. We're literally pulling from the chart of accounts with inside of GP. Oops, I didn't want to hit that. All right. Yes, I know, can't be blank. And I can distribute this across multiple accounts. So if I wanted 425 to be on this account, sorry. It's telling me all my warnings. It doesn't match. Yeah, I know. I didn't put something in that last, instead of hitting save, I should have toggled over. But so let's say I wanted to put it into this account, and I can start typing 61. I think I have something in there for this account, and choose it, right? And that's probably not a good one, but that's all right. We're just going to pretend. And so I can distribute this across multiple accounts. Now I don't have to put that information in here, and there's an issue with my adding, I think. I don't have to put that information in here, but I certainly can leave it blank if my approvers are the ones who need to put that in, right? So there's options there. Let me see, we're going to change this net 30. Net 30. There we go. So it was taking a discount because actually this vendor was set up. This vendor is set up for early pay. So you saw that it actually did that calculation. If you didn't see it, it did. But at this point, I'm going to send it to my reviewers. A couple of things that we can automate here. We can automate, hey, if you are putting in the GL distribution, we can look at segments of the account number and say, oh, 500 is the marketing department and 300 is the maintenance department. And so we can identify that, okay, who are the owners of those two departments, and automatically fill in the reviewers so that you don't have to do that. Mine has Jane in one area, and I want to add it to, let's say we'll do Bruno for the other one. And so this invoice now is going to go to two different people for review, respectively. All right. So I say send, I get the next, I get the next one in the stack. I think because it's calculating that. I didn't put a dollar amount in there, did I? I put it in the wrong one. There we go. Sorry about that. That was error, user error, and I don't have a credit amount. Sorry about that. That's user error. And it's usually between the back of the chair and the keyboard. That's what usually happens. All right. All right, Tammy. Well, we don't have time to work with this with my issues here. So we're just going to go ahead. And I think it was because I had that credit. We're just going to allocate it across one. Doesn't matter. Yes, I want to save that. Perfect. We're going to say, and now we're only going to send this to Jane. So we're going to delete this person. All right. Again, error between the back of the chair and the keyboard, which happens to be me. All right. So then we get the next one. Now you might get invoices that come in that don't need to be approved, right? Maybe you have recurring invoices. Great. Maybe this doesn't have to be approved. It's the same amount that it always is. And now I can say submit to GP. It will automatically create that transaction. In this case, it's a non-PO, so it's creating that non-PO invoice transaction in GP or that purchase invoice inside of Business Central. And I get the next one in the stack. So that's the first step. It does all of that data entry for you. You have the ability to key some of it in if you want, do that data entry for the distribution and so on. Let's go in real quick, and I want to show a PO, and I'll just look at this one for Business Central. Works the same way in GP. We find the PO number on the invoice. So we found the PO number. When we find the PO number, we then go out to Business Central or GP, and we're going to pull in the line items. If it's a receiving transaction, we're going to pull it from a receiving transaction. If it's a three-way match in GP, we're going to pull it from the receiving transaction. If it's a two-way, we're pulling it from the PO. And we can actually look for POs as well. So if it didn't find it, we can look this up. And again, this is going to be Business Central. And we can find any open PO order, right? This is, again, pulling from Business Central. So we can see that open and release. So if I wanted to choose this one, again, it comes in and creates those transactions, or excuse me, creates those line items. If it matches, I can submit to BC right from here. And of course, it's going to tell me it's a duplicate because I forgot to change my number. All right, we'll just do that, submit. And it creates the transaction and it moves on. All right, real quick, moving on to, I'm going to go back to another workflow here just to kind of follow some of these things that I've been working on. I've got a lot of options. You guys would not have nearly as many of these options within inside of the your process. So I'm going to play a reviewer. And again, I get to see everybody's, right? I can see Jane's, I can see Sarah's, I can see everybody's. We're going to filter by Jane. Jane will never, ever, ever have to do this. Because why do we know that? No. Jane. Tinkler. All right. Because we already know who she is. How does she even know she's got invoices though, or things to approve and review? Because we're sending her email notifications. Now this email notification can go out as frequently as you want. Most of our customers do it once a day, but listen, if you want to remind them 3 times a day, they can get an email that looks similar to this. I'm only going to show one way of approval, but we actually have 3 different ways. They can do it from their desk, which is the way I'm going to show it. They can also do it from their mobile device. We have a full mobile app that's downloadable from the app stores for Android and Apple devices, and they can add documents, they can add coding, they can approve, they can reject. They can do everything from that mobile app, and it will move on to the next step. They also can approve from their email. So not this email, but they can get another type of email that is what we call a per item. And they would get an email that looks similar to this, that they could see all of the coding and everything, the invoice. And then from here, they hit approve or reject. So 3 different ways. I'm only going to show you one. All right. So if this email was Jane's, it's not, but if it was, Jane would just click here on this icon and it would go right to her group of documents. Now she could be proactive too. She can come out to PaperSave. PaperSave is just a URL along your browser, whatever browser. She might only have this one tile. She clicks on it again. We know who she is. Boom, it takes her right to those documents. So we'll click on that first one. All right. Now, PaperSave starts building a workflow history. Where did this come from? When was it sent to me? And as soon as I go in and I hit approve as Jane or reject, it's going to date, time, and user stamp that I've approved it. And then it's going to go to the next step. Jane doesn't have to worry about that. That's the beauty of an electronic workflow, right? So if, again, those of you who are on the phone who aren't using PaperSave already for their automation of invoices, this is really going to give the approvers an easy way to approve, and it's going to make sure that all the invoices get approved to the level that they need to approve before they're coming back to you in accounting. Again, being a former accounts payable admin, listen, we had things, I'd get things coming back to me and go, oh, so-and-so has to approve it. And now I have to send it back out to them. And it's that ping pong effect, right? Back and forth. PaperSave's workflow eliminates all of that. So Jane's going to approve it. Again, maybe she does need to put in some GL distribution. She can do that here, and you can limit based on segments what account number she can choose from. So let's say she looks at supplies, and we'll look at just supplies. If I can get it, it's not behaving today. I would only see anything that starts with the 500 series, okay? And I could distribute this across multiple accounts. But when I'm done, all I have to do is say approve. Where does it go? Well, in Jane's case, I think it goes to her supervisor, but she doesn't have to worry about this. She could write a note on it. If she rejects it, PaperSave is going to require that she puts in a rejection reason. Where does it go? Well, it depends on who's rejecting it. If my boss is rejecting it, maybe it comes back to me as Jane. If Jane's rejecting it, maybe it goes back to somebody in accounting, right? So it just depends. It doesn't, there's no right or wrong, but they can reject it. We're going to go ahead and hit approve. And I get the next one in the stack. So approval, very easy. You can give them as much responsibility of coding or as little as you want. Again, mine moved to an escalation step, and Jane doesn't own any of those. So I'm going to hit view, and here's my group of documents. And again, you're going to see that these were approved and when, and then they can approve or reject. And so we're going to reject this and send this back. This should be account number 200 dash whatever. So I can type that note in there, and maybe I will say this, right before the demo, my computer was acting really slow, and I think it's acting slow again. So we're going to hit reject, and it leaves that queue. It goes back to Jane. Jane's going to get a notification that something was rejected, and then she can hit approve, right? And move on. So again, I get to see everybody's, and maybe Larry just wants to go in, see that Jane approved it. If this was Larry's, or Bruno approved it, Bruno is his charge. And then he can see the GL distribution. And if he looks at all of those, you can do mass approval as well. Again, depends on the owner, right? And what you want them to be able to do. All right, let's go to that last step, submit. So when you think about what we've done, we've created a request for purchase. It got approved. The purchase order was created inside of the accounting system. That invoice comes in. It may be PO related. It may not be PO related. If it's PO related, we're going to pull those lines. It can go through an approval process if need be. PO related or non-PO related. Accounting could also just submit right from that very first step. But those few that I've passed through are now sitting in this submit to ERP step. So they're back in accounting, right? So here they are. Some of these might be ones that I've worked on today. Maybe they're not. That's okay. we're going to change some of these invoice numbers anyway. So just so that we can make sure that everything is up to snuff for my numbers here. Also, from here, I can see who's approved them. Again, I always have this audit trail, right? There we go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and submit a few of these. It real time creates the transaction inside of the accounting system. And we'll just do a couple of them here. Submit. And then this document then moves over to the next step. So if I go into GP here, and again, I'll go into BC in just a minute and show you what it looks like. But these were non-PO related, so it actually created these transactions. There's the ResNet, and then in GP you get a bubble that pops up. In Business Central, there's a button you click and it shows you the document. All right. All right. So just wanted to show you that those were created inside of the system. So now what happens? So we've submitted, I'm going to leave some of them here. If I go back to this view here, now let's talk about the payment. So right now, if you don't have a payment solution, what you're doing is you are building a batch inside of your accounting system, right? You're building a batch of all of the payable invoice transactions that you want to pay. And you are probably printing out a payment batch journal. You're probably handing that to somebody or sending it via email. They're approving it all or making notes on that Excel spreadsheet or that report saying these are the ones we want to pay, and coming it back to you, and you're making any adjustments to that, right? And then you're hitting pay, and either checks are being printed. If you have a third party, they might be processing them, or most likely you're printing checks, or maybe you're sending something to the bank. But all of that is still done inside of your accounting system. Very manual process, right? Especially if you're printing checks. Now let's look at how we can automate that. All of those invoices that have gone through your PaperSave workflow, and listen, even ones that you had to manually create a transaction for because the gardener is standing in the lobby, and they need an invoice now, or they said it's got to be paid by tomorrow, so you need to get it into the system. You could manually create a transaction and it could still be part of the payment process. So once those invoices are submitted and the transaction is created inside of the ERP, the document now moves over to another step of the approval review process, because now all of the approval, building the batch and the approval of the batch is going to be done inside of PaperSave's workflow. So it's going to go through the person who's building the batch. In my case, I've got two levels of approver. The person who may say, yes, these are the invoices we want to pay. And then when the checks are printed, they're also the ones that are signing the check. They're going to have one step to do. You might have invoices that need, or checks that need two signatures. You're going to get two approvals. Therefore, you'll get two of those people who are signing the checks just to approve it based on whatever your threshold is. Once you're done here, your job is done. And then the payment solution comes in, where there are a lot of services and we do a lot. And we'll talk about that in a second. But let's go in and build that batch. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to go into the payment review. Again, the names of these steps, you can call whatever you want. This is what we've called them, but workflows are completely customer defined. You can we can create them from scratch for you. We can modify our templates. We can change names, all of that. So just kind of keep an open mind when you're looking at my workflows. But I've got 13 invoices. I can see what the total is. Maybe you pay everything weekly, right? Great. We already know what the cash amount is required. And I can send all of these over for payment review or payment approval, excuse me. Or maybe you go, no, we're going to pay everything based on a due date. Now I'm going to look at some of these due dates because some of them are old and some of them are not. So I'll just do a filter, right? So I want to pay anything that has a due date of, and I can filter, right? A due date less than or equal to, and we'll go out to, what do I have? We'll go out to next Friday. Although you really will only have to go out one extra day because payments are made immediately, depending on the time of day, but no more than 24 hours. So if I go out to the 25th, which is tomorrow, I've now narrowed it down to 4. Now I know my cash is $103. These aren't very big invoices, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and send them for payment review. So now look at what I'm getting. I'm getting a note that says, hey, some of these transactions haven't been posted inside of your, in this case, GP. Be same thing with Business Central. We're not going to allow you to pay anything that has yet to be posted, right? So they stayed here. Unbeknownst to me, they were not posted, but that's okay. We're going to clear my filter. And I know I did some other ones. So I think we're going to pay some of the ones that are more recent because I think I did those. So we'll send those over. There's some that haven't been posted either, but some of them will go over, which is good. All right. So they go over and now they're in the payment approval step. So here is, again, this is the treasurer, whoever is the check signer, whoever is saying, yes, these are the invoices we want to pay, right? They can, most likely, they're not going to look at every single one of them. Maybe they will, but this is that, the report. They get to see the vendor. They can see the dollar amount. They can see who approved them, right? Who the approvers were, all of that. They can go in and approve all of them at once, right? Say approve, or maybe they want to go and look at each one of them. That's fine too, and hit approve. If there's not another level of approval needed, your payment job is done because the data goes in 2 directions. It goes over to the payment solution to actually cut the check, do the ACH, the virtual card to your supplier. And then it also goes over and it creates the payment transaction inside of the ERP or the cash receipts journal, I believe is what it's called in Business Central, right? So let's go ahead and approve. So there is a validation that happens when it goes over to the payment. They're making sure, hey, is this really a vendor? Do we have all the payment banking information or how they like to be paid? We're going to send all of these over. Well, we'll leave one in there. And I don't think anything goes over to executive. No. But the data now is over in the payment solution. The payment, our PaperSave Pay is validating all of that supplier information. Before it creates a transaction inside of the ERP, and in this case, GP, it literally is in a holding pattern. It's saying, all right, we're gonna wait until we get validation from the payment solution that yes, this really is a valid vendor and so on, right? But once it completes it, it creates the payment transaction, and then it moves everything over to a completed step. So there's a completed step where the documents actually move. And let's see if I can find one that I did earlier. I always do a few earlier in the day so that we can pull them up. So let's look at ArcBest. So if I open this one up, actually, I think I did Highbridge, but that's okay. We'll look at this one. You'll see that the payment, the workflow now literally goes through this whole approval process, right? So this one didn't have an approval. It was paid or it was submitted right from the first step of my invoice approval, but you can see who approved it during the payment approval step. It was pending. It now created a payment transaction inside of, and in this case, it's GP. But this is the payment number. So it's 966. So if I go into GP and go into vendor inquiry, it's ArcBest, right? ArcBest. And we're going to go into type. payment. Oops, I didn't choose that payment. And refresh. Let's see if I can find it. There might be a lot of them in here. 966, this was it. All right. So it creates that transaction. Now you'll notice that there is a document number, an RC number. This is the actual record number, transaction payment, transaction number, pulling from the payment solution and into the payment transaction. It also is reflected here in the profile fields of PaperSave. So there's that tie between PaperSoft Pay, and I'm going to go into that here. I'm going to sign in. This is a dashboard. Really, you don't have to do anything from here. You can, this is really inquiry. You can certainly filter, sort any of these fields, but this is kind of your dashboard. You can actually go into an order. And if I go into an order, you'll see, I'm just going to go into one of them here. You'll see that RC number is referenced here. That's tying back to, again, that payment transaction inside of Business Central and or GP, also the document, right? So all of that's tying it together. So from here you have options to see specific orders. I can see my aging report, although, listen, I'm not going to go into all the services that we provide, but we are really maintaining this aging report. We're doing all the onboarding. We're doing all the vendor maintenance in terms of how they want to get paid, if they've moved, what their banking information is. We're doing all of that. Today's presentation was really just to show you from beginning to end in the software, what it looks like. I know we have a couple of minutes left. I want to leave some time open for inquiries or questions, but I do want to go into Business Central here real quick, because I want to show you that PaperSave does create those transactions and it ties the invoice. So let's go into one that's not posted, just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. And we're going to do a sending here, and we'll go down to ArcBest here, and we'll open up that one. So instead of that bubble that you saw with inside of GP, we now have a tile area, and I can say show document from here, and I can see all the documents, or see that document. I can see the approval process. That's all there. This one did not go, and here's the rejection. And why, not my invoice. But I can see all of that. Now, this one didn't go through pay, but if it did, it would have all of that same information. So that's where it is there. If it's a posted transaction, oops, I should have said yes, yes. If it's a posted transaction, it's going to show up here. Oops, sorry. Posted purchase invoice transaction, and same type of thing. Here is the invoice. And if this is a PO related invoice, I can say show interrelated. And if there were any documents related, so there was a document related to the purchase order. And then there was also two invoices that were paid. So here is the purchase order, and then there's the invoice. So this one, again, went through the approval process. So getting to the documents is as simple as navigating to the transaction, but with inside of PaperSave, we also have additional search capabilities. So if I go to my workflow again, remember that dashboard that we had for the work invoices that are active in a workflow, we also have a historical document. So we can do, you can see year-to-date invoices, last calendar year, right? I can look at last calendar year. Maybe the auditors want to see everything that we processed in October. I can click on October and say view. Here are my documents. I don't know how many they're going to be, a handful of them, 26. But what do I want to do with them? I can flip through them like a slideshow if I want to. I could share them as attachments. 26 attachments might be a lot. I could share them as an email link. So whoever I send this to only needs to click on that hyperlink to get to those documents. It'll open up PaperSave. Now, again, their security, they have to have the rights to it. You know, even if I sent them the link, if they don't have the rights to it, they can't see it. I also can export out into an Excel spreadsheet. So there's a lot of ways to get to the documents and then share the documents. So if these were auditors, they can click on a hyperlink and get right to the document. Unlimited number of users. So we don't have to worry about buying a user license for every person in the system. All right. I know that we've gone through a lot. This was a lot of information in 1 hour. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it back over to Josh.
Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate it. I know, as Tammy just said, for everybody on the call, that is a lot of information at one time. We did get quite a few questions and we appreciate the engagement here.